Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening. Sorry for the delay. We had a few technical difficulties beyond our control. So we shall continue with the lecture by Swami Abhedananda on the world as the result of vibrations. And as we mentioned before, we always are left with the science of the day. So of course Swami Abhedananda has to speak in terms of the science that was available to him over 100 years ago. In fact, this lecture was done in 1906, as I remember, just about the time of the San Francisco earthquake, because he references that. And as science improves, we can use new models to help us understand Vedanta philosophy. So we can't expect things to be a perfect match, but I think science is, progressively getting better and better language to describe things, and the Vedanta philosophy, again, was pronounced by the rishis, the seers, those in having mystical experiences, and they had to interpret the world according to their language that they had available, which wasn't the language we're speaking now. So all of these things have to be taken in mind when we read these talks. So we're on, if you're following along in the book, we're on page 561, and I think it was volume 4. Yes, volume 4. All right, Atma, would you like to read a little paragraph here about the chair? Take an example of a chair.
Take an example of a chair. In a chair there is electricity, light, heat, chemical force, and vibration. But still there is no manifestation of life in it, apparently. So we cannot say that there is that amount of intelligence in a chair as in a living protoplasm. For instance, protoplasm has life, and the first activity you will notice in a protoplasm is its expansion and contraction. That is the first expression of life force, just as our lungs do, and that you will find in a mass of protoplasm. That motion is caused by the prana, the life force. It's a mysterious force of nature. No one has understood it. If science fails to explain it, still it exists. Science only helps us in understanding it in a certain way, as well as in presenting it in a certain way, and also in a certain form so that our dull intellect can grasp. But it does not create anything new, nor can it destroy anything that exists. Science simply explains. If science has failed to explain, it is not the fault of the substance that exists, but is the fault of the intellect of the scientists, who cannot discover the presence of substance yet. Their intellect is defective, and when their intellect will be improved, that mysterious substance will be revealed. So this prana, although it is not explained by science at present, will be explained in times to come, perhaps. But it is already explained in Vedanta as the ultimate mother of all force. Science has gone so far as to prove the correlation of forces. Science goes to prove that all forces are but various manifestations of one force. And what that force is, science does not explain definitely. Some of the scientists say that is the intelligent mechanical force. Others hold that it is the intelligent force, and when that intelligent force is atomic, it will be something like the prana, and that prana is the cause of all evolutionary processes. The cosmic evolution is caused by that force of the prana. As the seed contains the power of growth, so the seed of the universe is in that ocean of ether as a germ. And that germ contains the life force, or the power of growth and evolution in a latent state. Gradually it begins to manifest itself, and when it begins to manifest itself, the cosmic evolution begins, and that is the manifestation of the tree of the phenomenal world. Gradually again the branches come out, and those branches cover all the visible and perceptible objects of the universe. Then human being comes last, because the human being is the finest production in the process of evolution. It is not the greatest, but the most subtle and most complex, because the organization is very delicate and complex. The organization of a highly developed man is found more delicate if one has gone into the details of the brain cells, how they work and how they are guided. In fact, no human mind can grasp the connections and the ramifications of the forces and powers that are working through the brain and nervous system.
Wow, that was quite a paragraph. So, of course, this is a very thought-provoking topic. And he'd mentioned before that, of course, the whole universe is pervaded by consciousness, and consciousness is the groundwork of existence. You know, existence, consciousness, bliss. That's Abhedananda. And so even what we think of as inert dead matter actually does have consciousness in it. One of my favorite stories was when John Dobson was talking to a conference, and he was putting forth the hypothesis that we have to consider sentiency. He would call it sentiency rather than consciousness, just to kind of distinguish it. Sentiency in inert matter. And his audience was not going along with him too well and arguing. So he said, I know you think you're sophisticated beings. You know where down is. But if you really want to know where down is, you hang an insentient piece of lead on an insentient string, and then you know exactly where down is. And he said the audience all shut up and let him talk. So that's the mystery. Now there's obviously, as Abhedananda is pointing out here, something different about living things from what we call the non-living things. And yet they're all pervaded by this one force in the universe. The Satchitananda is behind everything. And of course we talked, I think, last time that when we look at the individual atoms, we see a lot of motion in the atoms, a lot of vibrations. Of course, Brownian motion is the random motion of the molecules. And theoretically, the motion of molecules and atoms would stop. All the vibrations of the various parts of the atom, all of those would stop at absolute zero. And we also know that theoretically we can't achieve absolute zero. It's one of those things in the universe where you run into an infinity or an infinitude where things simply don't exist. Your formulas and your equations don't go there. And so that's one of them. It's like the speed of light. You can't go beyond it because relativity equations end up with infinities in them. And so similarly, this mysterious universe is pervaded by some sort of energy or vibration which pervades everything. And it seems that's another interesting point. When you look at science, it has all sorts of conservation laws. You have the conservation of momentum, the conservation of angular momentum, the conservation of energy, the conservation of spin, the conservation of charge. And all of them go to zero except for energy. The total momentum of the universe sums up to zero. The total charge sums up to zero. The total angular momentum sums up to zero. All of these things sum up to zero except energy. Energy does not sum up to zero, even though it's conserved. It does not sum up to zero. And that is the best idea I can come up with for the physical representation of that all-pervasive energy of Brahman, that pranic energy. It pervades the whole universe, and as we talked last time, it manifests as these different kinds of energy. You'd have gravitational energy, kinetic energy, radiation, electricity, and magnetism. All of those different forms of energy, and he's mentioned many of those here as well. So those are the 5 energies, and they're of course related to the 5 elements of antiquity. We know that because they're connected to the various sense organs we have. Our sense organs then detect these 5 energies, and matter is nothing but energy. E equals mc squared. And so we know that even what we perceive as matter is really some mysterious form of energy, potential energy. So, but what exactly distinguishes inanimate objects from living things is quite a mystery. And when you look at people that try to study the origins of life, and you realize how complex a living cell is, immensely complex, the thought of how this would happen randomly seems astronomically impossible. To somehow for a cell membrane to form that would protect the inside of a cell from the outside of the cell, how the ribosome and the DNA, how all those molecules suddenly spontaneously out of nothing. You need the page there. Yeah, right there. How that would all happen as some sort of random chemical process is really quite mysterious. And so you have to think that there's some intelligent force that's guiding this prana, that the prana has some sort of innate intelligence in it. All right, so let's go on with the ruler of death explains here.
Mm-hmm. Thus, the ruler of death explains whatever exists in this phenomenal world is but the manifestation of the vibration of the prana. This is not the first expression of the prana and of the projection or creation. Here you will notice the wonderfully scientific idea which these ancient seers of truth had as regards creation. They never said, "Let there be light," and there was light. All those ideas are mythical, but the scientific explanation you will find nowhere so old and wonderfully correct and so rational at the same time as you will find in the Vedas. It has been said in the Rig Veda, at that time, before the beginning of creation, there was neither existence nor non-existence. Relative existence and relative non-existence did not exist. There was neither the space nor the time. The darkness was running over the darkness. What existed then? Neither the sun, the moon, nor the stars. No light was there. There was neither death nor therefore immortality. These are all relative terms. If you have death, you can have immortality. But if there were no death, how could there be immortality? Therefore, these are all relative terms. One presupposes the existence of the other. Before creation or evolution, there was neither day nor night. All these came later. So what existed then? There was one eternal being who was breathing but breathless. And Shavatam.
Yeah.
If you can understand what that breathless breathing is, you will know what life is.
It's Anitavatam, I think it is. Yeah, your scan might be a little off. Yeah, Anitavatam.
If you can understand what that breathless breathing is, you will know what life is. Because life does not mean breath, but that which produces breathing, and that which causes the motion of the lungs, the motion of the diaphragm, the activity of the organs, and that is life. It's the outward expression. In that one universal substance, all these mighty forces of nature came into being or manifestation. Force below and energy above the space was formed. So you see that description is most poetic. It is the most beautiful description of creation before the time of evolution that the world has ever received. And the seers of truth to whom that idea was revealed were extremely rational, and they would not accept anything simply upon heresy. And there, in those expressions, they laid the foundation of true science, true philosophy, and true religion. Nothing can change it, nothing can shake it. We may manufacture various kinds of religion and superstitious ideas, but still those we cannot change. We cannot destroy the truth or the conception of truth. which these ancient seers had so from that one eternal being we have all come into existence by the power of the prana.
That seems odd, doesn't it? It looks like it's starting a new paragraph, but anyway.
The external world, as also everything that is internal, everything that is subject and forms a part of our consciousness or conscious existence, has also come out from that one conscious, self-shining being.
Okay, I'll pause for a minute and make a few comments here. So, if you look at creation myths over the sort of the spectrum of mythological stories, almost all of them invoke some sort of vibrational idea. It's either there was a cry of light, or which is the Egyptian idea, and then the biblical idea of God saying, "Let there be light," very similar idea. There's myths about two opposing forces fighting each other. If you go to some place like Iceland, you find that the mythology is fire and ice fighting each other, and if you go to Hawaii, it's fire and water fighting each other. And so these are the creative forces. So all of them involve some sort of tug of war, you could say, or back and forth, or some sort of vibrational sound. Another ancient myth is that a star fell into the water, and the ripples in the water are the creative force. And so again, obviously, if you're before creation, there isn't any star and there isn't any water, but these are metaphorical stories that are meant to express this idea that the universe is literally made out of vibration, and that creation is, again, you can't really have creation as an event in time, because time and space, even in these mythologies, time and space are in the creation. They are created along with everything else. So it's not an event in time, but it's creation of space and time and the vibrational energy in it. So it's very interesting when you look at all these mythologies. Once you have a grasp of what, say, the Vedic creation myth is saying, then you can see similar elements in all of these other creation myths, that they're all dealing with some sort of vibration or tug of war between two opposing forces and that kind of thing. All right, let's go on.
The external world forms only one half of the universe. It is the objective world which we perceive with our senses. The other half is the subjective, that which forms a part of our mind, and which includes all sensations, perceptions, thoughts, ideas, emotions, percepts, concepts, willpower, intellect, and other functions of our inner nature, is subjective, and that cannot be explained by the objects of perception or external objects. We may say anything about the mechanical process of the external phenomena, but we cannot say that all the internal phenomena are caused by mechanical process, because at every step we find the hand of the intelligent being. It can be asked as to who will digest the food, who will extract it from the nervous energy, who will transform it into willpower and intellect, and the answer will be that would require a living being or an intelligent substance. The mechanical process would not do. It must be guided by an intelligent hand, and that is the hand of our true self, which possesses the prana, the life force which is living. So both the external and the internal world have come into existence from that one being or substance by the power of the prana and through the process of evolution. If we understand as well as remember this, then we understand the whole process of creation or projection. The whole world is eternal in its substance, but is non-eternal in its phenomenal nature or in its form. The form of the earth will be destroyed. The form of the sun, moon, and stars will be destroyed. The form of the body will be destroyed. Nay, everything that is form will be destroyed. But that which is formless substance or mother force or energy will remain from eternity to eternity. This is the law. When one form is destroyed, another will come and take its place. Just as when one city is destroyed, another city will grow out of its ruins. And perhaps within 5 years you will see another San Francisco, larger and more prosperous than it was before. Such is the law of nature. One is destroyed and another comes and takes its place. This earth is destroyed, another earth will be created right away, and all these living souls will disappear and inhabit there. This is the way we are living in this universe, coming again and again, fulfilling our desires and purposes, and learning lessons and gaining experience in the world. But all this we are doing through the force of the prana. We could not gain any experience if we were dead, if we had no life, if we had no thought, if we had no will, and if we had no prana. Every object in the universe is obeying the laws. This prana has been called as the prana Brahman. The text says, Shankara says, etad means, and of the prana, and nothing can disobey. Are we not obeying the laws of gravitation? Are we not obeying the laws of attraction and repulsion constantly? Yes, we are obeying it, perhaps unconsciously, so the earth is obeying the law of gravitation. The earth cannot disobey that law. Nothing can disobey the law of gravitation, and that idea has been given most beautifully in a poetic way. The Upanishad says that eternal being is a great terror. Every animate and inanimate object obeys him, obeys his law. All the objects, even the sun, moon, and stars, are obeying the command of that infinite being, consciously or unconsciously. They cannot transcend it.
Yeah, I remember there was a T-shirt that somebody had that said, "Gravity isn't just a good idea; it's the law." So, he did not have the advantage of quantum mechanics in 1906. Relativity came into existence in 1905, but quantum mechanics really didn't get completely formulated until another decade or so later. And in quantum mechanics, it's the idea that the observer is crucial to the existence of the nature of the universe, that things exist in states of probability until a conscious entity observes it. And I've always thought it would be fascinating to do experiments to see exactly how far down that consciousness goes. Swami has several interesting books on the subject of quantum physics and consciousness and Vedanta philosophy. And in one of those, he points out that they have done an experiment with random number generators, and they have discovered that people with certain kind of psychic abilities to skew physical results are able to determine greater amounts of, say, ones instead of zeros in a random number generator, even after the numbers have been supposedly generated by the computer. In other words, the computer's asked to generate random numbers, and they're stored in the computer someplace, and then the people are asked to skew the results one way or the other, and they had statistically significant results in doing so. So that would indicate that the silicon chips in the computer are not the level of consciousness needed to collapse the probability wave functions of quantum mechanics. But I've often wondered, would a petri dish of bacteria be enough? In other words, if the computer imprinted the results in a petri dish of bacteria, would that be enough, or would it have to be some larger or some greater manifestation of life or consciousness to collapse the wave function? So that's always been a question in my mind. I wish somebody would do that experiment. See if a plant could do it. You hook plants up with an electrode or something, or various levels of animal forms, and see if the imprinting of that information from the random number generator into those different life forms are enough to collapse the wave function. All right, well, let's go on with the next paragraph.
Where does it start?
Try to transcend.
try to transcend the law of gravitation and you cannot exist. The sun tries to transcend the law of gravitation, where will it be? It will no longer be the sun. If the earth rebels against the same law and says, no, I am greater than the sun must move around me and I shall remain stationary, the earth will not exist. So you see, as a master who holds an iron rod in his hand and commands everything, so the infinite and universal being is commanding everything. Everything is bound to obey. He who understands this secret transcends death and becomes immortal. When we know that infinite being under whose command everything is doing his duty, performing its function, when we understand him and his nature and the laws under which we are governed, then we have known everything of the universe and we have understood our immortal nature. Then we have known that death cannot reach us. Death can only attack anything that has form, and so long as we are thinking that we are one with the body, one with form, we are subject to death. We have fear of death. But if we can once think of ourselves as formless, and still we have existence and individual personality, but no form, then we have transcended death. We have become deathless. And that is the great difficulty that we find in our way. The attachment to the form, to the bodies, to external things, and to objects of sense perception, color, taste, touch, which makes us slave to the form. And consequently, the wings of our souls are clipped. We cannot go into that flight and cannot take flight and soar high above in the infinite space of the absolute reality. We come down on the plane of the senses and become attached. And through that attachment, we get fear of death, and then we have thought of gain and loss. But when we realize our real essence, which is nameless and formless, then we transcend the thought of gain or loss. So we should not be self-deluded. Therefore, we must open our eyes and see things as they are in reality.
You know, it's interesting, though, that even though we know the soul is beyond the body and the form is just temporary, when people have psychic experiences of departed ones or something, it frequently has some sort of form, and I've always wondered why. You know, why do they come with particular set of clothes on and that sort of thing, and at a particular age? That's always struck me as rather curious. All right, let's read a little more.
From the terror of Brahman, or that infinite being, the fire gets heat and light. The sun gets heat and light. The clouds shower rain. The wind blows, and death runs from place to place. These are all obeying the laws of the prana, which are also the laws of nature. In fact, those are nothing but the products of these forces, which are governed by the laws of that eternal being. But what are these laws? They are nothing but the molds in which the prana is operating in nature, and consequently nothing can transcend that infinite being. There comes the solid and rational foundation of true religions. When you want to get the idea of an infinite being who is the governor of all vibrations, as well as all evolution, and whose laws no one can transcend, then comes the conception of the infinite nature. And at that moment we begin to feel how small we are, and consequently we kneel and bow down before that terror. That whom the sun obeys, the moon obeys, and no one can transcend. Must be infinitely larger, infinitely greater, and infinitely more powerful than our individual ego. And consequently, when we are in distress or trouble, we pray to him, we worship him, and try to overcome our grief and sorrow by thinking about him. There is the root or beginning of religion. So you see, the philosophy and religion go hand in hand. This religion is the natural outcome of science and philosophy. It is not man-made religion, but it is universal and eternal religion. The Upanishad says that eternal, infinite being, if we can know before the dissolution of the body, then we have reached the highest goal. Then we have become immortal. Now the ruler of death is explaining the mystery of death. How one can become immortal by knowing that source or root of the immortal universe, knowing that the prana is governing everything, and the whole world is but the product of vibration. And the source of the universe is the terror. No one can transcend his laws, but everyone must obey him. If we know this and realize it, then death cannot attack us. Then we think of ourselves as formless and as part of the formless infinite being, which is the intelligent source that governs the universe.
Okay, can I have the pleasure of reading the last paragraph?
Sure.
All right. This is our last class of the year because next Friday is Christmas Eve, and I hope you all join us for our Christmas program, Christmas Eve program. And there'll be one in Trabuco at 11 and one in Hollywood at right after Arati. And then the following Friday is New Year's Eve, and we have a midnight meditation. So we hope that you will join us for those. So here's our final paragraph, and then I'll make a few concluding remarks. In fact, we govern ourselves in a smaller way, and so we are the governor of our bodies. If we were not a part of the universal governor or ruler of the universe, then we would not govern even on a small scale. And this is one of the proofs by which we know that as we are the governors of our bodies in a small way, we are parts of the governor of the universe. The same power is manifested in us. Therefore, we are children of God as well as parts of the infinite being. Then we know that we have transcended death. The realm of the death is below us. It cannot hold us, and we are above and beyond death. And those who do not realize it are born again into the realm of creation. And of course, that is, we have those two ways of expressing this mystery, that we are, both part of the universe, as well as, how did he put it? We're children of God as well as parts of the infinite being. So we have both of those ideas that are common in religions, and it's just different ways of expressing something that's really difficult to understand or comprehend. And so we use these metaphorical languages. But this idea of this vibrational foundation to the universe, as he mentions, nobody really we can't really grasp it, and yet we see it all around us, and we see evidence for it all around us. And we find, anecdotal evidence for it, and we have our own subjective experience of it. We can go into various places in different environments, and we might feel like a place is kind of has a creepy vibration or a really uplifting vibration. And we can't really understand it. There aren't machines that can measure it, or we can't put it on a graph, but somehow we sense it. And so these things are kind of anecdotal. We know that there are experiments that people do where they sort of imprint energies into, say, crystals or into water, and they feel that it has an effect on it. We know that some of the people like Ramakrishna, they couldn't eat food that was prepared by people that were extremely impure, because the imprint of their vibrations were in the food. And so, how else to explain that but this idea of vibrations? We know that people can respond differently to colors. People that do interior decorating will tell you that that it's good to have a particular color in a particular room in order to either give a calming vibration or a more uplifting vibration. I remember reading an article many years ago that if you go into a restaurant, notice that a lot of them have very bright colors that are somewhat jarring and contrasting. They might have a couple of red and yellow and orange and purple or something in the fabric colors. And the reason they do that is they want you to feel lively, and they also want you to get out of there. They want you to come in and eat and have a good time, but they don't want you to stick around because they want the table free for the next person. And so people study these psychological effects of colors and put them to good use in interior decorating for both businesses and homes. And people wear certain colors in order to feel a certain way. And sound too. We know that people respond differently to different kinds of music. And these are individual things too. It's not necessarily universal. Some people will respond more to a particular kind of music. In fact, they've done MRI studies where they will put people in an MRI thing, and then they'll play what they think of as their favorite music. And indeed, their brains respond differently to what they consider their favorite music than to other music, which might be somebody else's favorite. And so these things, we're vibrational beings, and then so the different kinds of music affect us in particular ways, different frequencies. And of course, we have ideas of sound healing. We play gongs during Vespers, bells and temples. All of these things are vibrational energies which enhance the worship service. And so vibrations are with us everywhere. It's very difficult to measure and to quantify, but we find that people report good experiences with various kinds of sounds. And we know that some sounds can be very jarring. If you it can be very tiring to have to listen to a jackhammer out in the street or something like that, or the constant honking of horns in the highway or something, and very peaceful to listen to a wind chime and so forth. So all of these things can be very healing, and we know that vibrational energy has been used in religious ceremonies all across civilizations and millennia. Drumming and bells and rhythmic chanting and various instruments, flutes and didgeridoos and Tibetan bowls, and you get all of these different things. And of course, the Tibetan chanting, where they get those deep, resonant overtones to their voices and so forth. So all of these things are vibrational energies, and from the music done for the masses, for the hymns sung in Protestant churches, to the grand oratorios and the rock operas and whatever it is that turns you on, all of these different vibrational energies enhance our being, and we tend to tune in to the ones that our bodies are receptive to, and that can differ from one person to another. And that's, of course, there's a whole area of sound healing where people will use sounds to heal certain conditions, and so people that are trained in that will know what kinds of sounds are good for what kinds of conditions. So with that note, we wish you a very happy holiday season, and hope that you will tune in to our Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve programs. And until next year, we will conclude with our chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om peace, peace, peace. And I thought of another footnote I meant to talk about. Homeopathic medicine is also vibrational medicine. The idea is that the various chemicals have a certain vibrational energy, which is similar to the disease that you're trying to get rid of. And so they reduce the amounts until there's very possibly only a molecule two or so left of the actually original substance, and maybe not any. If you're doing like a 12x homeopathic remedy, there may not be any molecules of the original substance left. But the theory is that the vibration of that substance is left in the little sugar cube, or the little sugar pellet. And it's that vibrational energy which then shifts your vibrational energy into a state of greater health. And so that's just another example of how vibrations can be of a healing nature.
What about Bach flowers?
The essence of the vibration of the flowers, right? And again, those are things that have been intuited by mystics, and they've come up with those remedies from their mystical intuitions. People that are tuned into the devas of the plant spheres, they'll be told, given instructions as to how these different Bach flower remedies can be used. All right. Thank you for letting me put in a couple of footnotes there.